Yeah.
Yeah. So the next person that jumped in was Ethan. Ethan, appreciate you joining. If you unmute, happy to take your question.
Thank you for having me, Brady. I really appreciate being here. I just got to say, I love the Bonzo platform. It is really great, and you guys do a great work with the platform. However, I do have one question. I think the Bonzo platform could greatly benefit from adding more tokens that can offer like greater utility, or that already offer great utility. And one of those tokens that is top of mind is Grelf. It has like one of the largest liquidity pools, like the best liquidity pools, honestly, out of all the meme coins. And I think it would be greatly, they could help enhance each other if it was added for depositing and borrowing against. That is all.
So
Thanks for the
appreciate.
suggestion, Ethan. Yeah. Greg, did you did you ask him to say this? Just kidding.
Oh my gosh. What an accusation. Ethan,
No,
get out of here. They're on to us. Hurry. No,
but it's a great
you know,
suggestion. Thank you.
but obviously he's a Grelf fan. He's aware of my massive amount of utilities bills. My water and power are extremely expensive. I have to pay the Empire just loads of money to keep the lights on. So I have lots of utilities bills. Yeah.
Well, so to answer that question, it's a great question. We do get a lot of requests with regards to support for their assets. The mission for Bonzo Finance is to become the liquidity layer of the Hedera, and in order to fulfill that mission, support for as many ecosystem assets and projects as possible is important. That fulfills the mission, or at least a very important part of it. And so there's a balance here, though. So unlike Saucer Swap or decentralized exchanges, the liquidity pools in decentralized lending protocols all interplay with each other in a way that decentralized exchanges do not. So liquidity pools indexes are isolated. So you can instantiate as many pools as you want in Saucer Swap, for example. And by adding more pools to the protocol, it does not increase the risk for other assets because of how isolated each of the pools are relative to each other. With lending protocols, the pools all function as a whole, and the addition of an asset pool to the protocol doesn't just increase the risk for the asset, it increases the risk for the entirety of the protocol. And that's because you can supply one asset as collateral and borrow any other asset, and now the two are tied together. So we have to create a balance between risk mitigation and adding as many assets as possible. And there are parameters that can be set to allow us to do that, whereby we can add even risky assets, but set the parameters in such a way that we can mitigate the risk. We are currently working on the addition of a couple assets right now. There's a few requirements when doing that, when you add an asset. So one of those requirements is you need to have sufficient liquidity of the asset that's being added in the primary DEX of the network. So for us, that's Saucer Swap. We have to have enough liquidity of that asset in Saucer Swap in order to ensure that it's safe. So that's because in the case of liquidations of that asset, there needs to be enough liquidity on the DEX for the liquidator. And then in addition to that, lending protocols require Oracle price feeds. So, a prerequisite for adding an asset is that our Oracle provider, Supra, who's been awesome, they've been amazing about being able to add price feeds for Hedera ecosystem assets. They need to support a price feed so that the contracts in the lending protocol know what price the asset is at, which is important because you need to know the price in order to, be able to sufficiently liquidate and obviously track that price and understand the value of what's been supplied and or borrowed. So yeah, again, long-winded answer. It is very important for us to support as many assets as possible, but we have to, in summary here, we have to balance that with ensuring that we are being conscious of risk. And
so it sounds like Grelf would need to add some supply to Bonzo, separate from the liquidity pool. It's also thick, and I need to talk to these Supra people.
Yeah, and we can help you with that. And honestly, of all of the meme coins, and even relative to non-meme coin project assets, Grelf actually has a pretty significant amount of liquidity in Saucer Swap that should meet the thresholds. And so, when it comes to support for the Grelf asset, I do see that being as a viable thing. And so, yeah, Grelf, we can talk about that on the side, but definitely something that we see as important.
Thank you for that answer, Brady. The reason I asked for it was because I'm in a situation similar to what Brian explained earlier, where I hold lots of Grelf and I want to buy a house, but I don't want to sell my Grelf. You know what I mean? So it would make my life way easier. I'm sure lots of other Grelf fans easier if they could deposit it and then borrow against it so I can use that for my down payments.
And then we can start the Grelf neighborhood.
Correct.
And it can descend into chaos in about a week.
People who buy houses, lending on is
love the idea of borrowing against Grelf to buy a house is hilarious to me. It's amazing. I mean, very legitimate. It's not illegitimate, but it is funny to think about. Yeah. I feel that. And
who says meme coins can't get you houses? Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's when you think about where a majority of the liquidity and lending protocols come from, um, if you look at other networks with a lending protocol and token-based projects on them, a lot of times it is the founding team members, large holders of the asset or investors, market makers, it's the treasuries of those projects that are actually the largest suppliers of the asset in the lending protocol for things like treasury management activities, or the founders just wanting to be able to not sell their asset, but be able to utilize its value through a borrowing mechanism. You see that in TradFi too, like Elon Musk puts up his Tesla stock as a loan and is able to diversify his portfolio or borrow against it to purchase things like that. So, yeah, just additional color there.